It's probably been predicted of what it's now about to do a million times in the last 10 years. Okay. From some, good people, some people that are always saying it's going to the moon, but good people. But the argument now.
You're watching Silver News Daily. Subscribe for more.
Did you know silver prices might be on the verge of a massive breakout? Peter Grandich is sounding the alarm, predicting that silver's next rally could take it to new all-time highs. This isn't just another guess. Grandich believes there are powerful forces aligning that could make this the most explosive silver market we've seen in decades. So what exactly is setting the stage for silver to soar? Stick around, because today we're diving into why silver could be just getting started on its climb to the top.
No, but what we've seen now is they've publicly disclosed a system, and they've already trial run it with people getting used to it. I don't think they're going to have a fully disclosed. I think the mistake would be, and that's what happened last year, that somehow they're going to introduce a new currency to compete with the dollar and all. I don't think that's ever been their intention. What I do think is that their system that will work between them will eventually kill the dollar on its own, because the dollar won't be partaking in it. I don't think they're looking to compete with it. I just believe that their situation will be viewed as, hey, this is a whole lot better than the dollar. And what I think, one of the interesting Putin said today was how he noted now that the gross domestic product of the countries that are planning on joining and all are now surpassing the Western world combined. And over half the population in the world now will be members of BRIC. This is no longer just some sideshow that a few years ago people scoffed at. And like I said, I have yet to see any serious talk on any of the so-called mainstream financial networks or talking heads to give this anything more than a laugh or a minute joke. And I think the big joke is going to be.
To understand just how significant this moment is for silver, let's take a look at its current position in the market. Recently, silver prices have shown remarkable resilience, breaking past $30 per ounce, a level that's long been a psychological and technical barrier. And despite some fluctuations, silver has maintained this strength, steadily climbing with each new wave of demand. This time, however, isn't like previous rallies. Experts are saying this is different. The metal's ability to hold steady at higher levels, even as other markets waver, signals that silver might be ready for a historic breakout. Now, what's driving this stability and pushing prices upward? The recent pullback in U.S. Treasury yields and the dollar's dip from recent highs have created a favorable environment for silver, bringing a renewed spotlight to this safe haven asset. And with silver's role as both an industrial and precious metal, it's positioned uniquely to benefit from these shifts, unlike many other commodities. So, could this be the tipping point? Are we about to witness a massive surge that propels silver into a new era? Let's dive further to see what's giving silver this powerful momentum.
It's probably been predicted of what it's now about to do a million times in the last 10 years. Okay. From some, good people, some people that are always saying it's going to the moon, but good people. But the argument now for it has never been better. The fundamental argument, and it ties into just what is happening on the world stage in terms of people's concerns about paper assets. I think that's the thing that's not being spoken about. I still find the financial service industry as a whole completely out of it to try to even begin to understand what is happening regarding the BRICS, the change coming in monetary systems, the introductions of new trading partners that will not be looking to use the dollar or even some of the Western world systems. These are all things that are partly assisting the metals movement, but Wall Street has no misunderstanding. I keep going back to, it wasn't that long ago when I was speaking to some young financial advisors. I don't think any of them were over 40 and many of them were under 30. And when they said he's going to talk about the BRICS, I heard one say to the other, he's going to talk about the housing industry. That's how it's not everybody like that, but there really is a neglect. And what I don't believe people can't get away with is what's happening in the world now impacts us. We're not a generation or two generations ago where the United States could be separate from the world and not be insulated from anything else that happens around there. And we have huge problems. You know, think about this, Elijah. Sorry for going on, but this is really important. We have clearly the Middle East in the most dire situation it's been in a couple of decades. I mean, this could really go worse than anything we've seen in any record time. We see the Ukraine situation not getting better. We see now North Korean soldiers going to Russia to fight on Russia. Don't forget, you can call them a crazy man, whatever, but North Korea has nuclear weapons, and several of them. We see just recently, just days ago, China literally surround the entire island of Taiwan and basically say that, hey, listen, you guys better get your act together and join us or there's going to be a problem. And this is not counting all the social and political issues that we have with immigration here and abroad, economics. We just saw our government spend another $500 billion to our deficit in just 3 weeks. It's all, I hate to say it, but all the doom and gloom that people say, oh, I heard that for years. And well, now the perfect storm has basically come together for it and all. And that also is the underlining support to the metals. I tell you this much, I feel much happier owning gold here and not worrying about a 30 or 50% correction. I think that's completely off the table, but there can be a 30 to 50% fall in the stock market. And so I'm quite happier that I chose gold as a capital appreciation and in my portfolio than the general equity market right now.
One of the biggest forces setting silver up for a potential explosive rally is the Federal Reserve's current stance on interest rates. Recent comments from Fed officials suggest a shift toward a slower, more cautious approach to rate cuts, which could mean lower interest rates over time. This move generally spells good news for precious metals like silver. Why? Because when rates drop, investments that don't generate interest, like silver, become more attractive to investors looking to preserve value without the drag of higher rates elsewhere. Right now, we're seeing a pullback in U.S. Treasury yields, which has provided some relief for silver prices that had recently dipped. This pullback has also caused a dip in the dollar, which often boosts precious metals since a weaker dollar makes assets like silver more affordable on the global market. As a result, silver's path upward is looking stronger, despite some short-term fluctuations. With Fed policies likely to remain in focus for the foreseeable future, how much of an impact could this really have on silver's trajectory? And will the Fed's moves be enough to push silver to the record highs Grandich predicts? Stay tuned. This is only the beginning.
I think in the very short term, I think a lot of the movement was based on what was transpiring with the BRICS. Now we go into those meetings next week. We've already seen a lot of news come out. It's all bullish for those of us who've been big believers in the BRICS. I've been one of them. I think I'd be hard to believe there was somebody much more of a believer than I. And there tends to be sometime buy the rumor, sell the news. So there's always that possibility. And what I would just tell people, and nobody knows the future but Almighty God, is we know we'll be in a bull market if it's a sharp sell-off. And everybody goes, how's that? Bull markets always have sharp sell-off corrections. It's when things just trickle and goes down and goes back a little. You think it's turning, it goes down again. That's a bear market. And that the goal isn't anything near that. So it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't change my long-term thoughts, but it's hard to talk about resistance because we're at levels we've never been before. The only resistance I think somebody would talk about is a psychological number, which would be 3,000. The thing to talk about, which is something that Pete Grandich has not spent decades talking about, and the silver bugs used to get mad because I always felt it was like kissing your sister compared to owning gold, is that silver now has demonstrated it's now first breaking out, and would not surprise me that while they both go up over time, that silver from here to say the end of the year actually has more of a percentage gain than gold. I think one of the big stories that's come out in that, besides the tremendous short position, and there is that we're learning more and more two key things for silver. One, the surprising industrial use militarily wise. That's not something that's been discussed till recently, until we start to realize how much silver is being used in military weapons and things. But then also that China has now been going around the world buying silver directly from miners. And these all just bode well. So other than healthy, normal consolidation and correction, both of them's least resistance is high.
Beyond interest rates, a major driver for silver's upward momentum is the sheer scale of institutional demand pouring into the market. Unlike short-term retail surges, this interest is coming from some of the world's largest financial players and even central banks looking to diversify their holdings into safe haven assets. With silver up over 40% year-to-date, this isn't a quiet investment trend. Big money is actively seeking out silver as a hedge against economic uncertainty, inflation, and market volatility. What's interesting is that many institutional investors are moving into silver precisely because of its dual role as both a precious and industrial metal. Silver's appeal goes beyond just being a store of value like gold. It also has real-world utility in technology and manufacturing. For instance, demand for silver is surging in green energy technologies, especially in solar panels and electric vehicles, which rely heavily on silver's conductive properties. This powerful combination of safe haven appeal and industrial demand could provide a solid foundation for the next rally. So, with institutional investors piling in, will silver's value continue to surge as new all-time highs come within reach? Could this be the foundation for the historic rally Grandich foresees? There's still so much more to uncover.
Actually, where most people are just general market people, they're not gold-oriented. And I said, listen, for pure capital gains, I think gold's going to outperform both stocks and bonds. And they're like, especially bonds. How could you tell me, And I just feel through 2024 was my line that gold would outperform both of them. And it has. And what's interesting, when this year began again, I said, for the year on its own, gold will outperform stocks. And what's really amazing is, I get these weird emails. I guess some people don't have much else to do in life. Elijah, God bless them. And, how could you tell people to put everything in gold and all? And yet they all rave about Bitcoin. And they rave about a person that tells them not even to spread the money among different cryptocurrencies, just put it all in Bitcoin. So all over the media, there's people telling you Bitcoin's going to the moon, Bitcoin's going to $1 million, put it all in Bitcoin. And yet I use something that worked for a couple of thousand years. Central banks are buying it like there's no tomorrow. They're not buying Bitcoin, they're buying gold. And yet I'm the crazy one. So it's okay. At the end of the day, it was the...
Now, let's turn up the heat with a bold prediction that's caught the attention of both investors and silver enthusiasts alike. Keith Neumeyer, CEO of First Majestic Silver, has set a jaw-dropping target of $100 per ounce for silver. And this isn't just a shot in the dark. Neumeyer bases his triple-digit forecast on some compelling factors: rising industrial demand, a persistent supply deficit, and silver's continued undervaluation relative to gold. Neumeyer points out that silver's supply-demand gap is widening. Each year, more silver is consumed than mined, especially with technology sectors like solar energy and electric vehicles increasingly dependent on it. According to Neumeyer, this consistent deficit could push silver prices higher as demand outpaces supply, and he's not alone in this view. Grandich, too, sees silver's industrial role as key to its rally potential, believing these structural demands make the metal a unique investment right now. This kind of ambitious forecast is stirring up major interest. Could a $100 price point be on the horizon, as Neumeyer predicts? And how much of this growth will be fueled by silver's expanding role in critical industries? The case for silver's rise is only getting stronger, and the next few insights will reveal why.
One, if you think, let's just say Trump wins, we'll just on assumption Trump wins. We already know what seems like half the country was willing to do in order not to have him, and what was resorted to. Do you think just because he wins the election, they go, okay, we lost let's walk away. No, I just think they become 100 times worse if that's possible. Let's say for some reason he doesn't win, or he doesn't win because there's highly questionable stuff. If you think we had issues before, there's going to be. So the only delay I see is I do see if he wins, there'll be a short honeymoon period, probably until he's sworn in and goes in a few months, that some people will feel breathe out because it's not as severe as it could have been. But then the reality, everything around it. But I'll tell you the biggest issue that I find, I'm in my 41st year. Given all the issues that you and I only touched on that we can spend hours talking about, that are legitimate social, economic, and political issues, I've never seen investors and the investing professionals as complacent anywhere near as they are today. And for me, this is a kind of an important day because tomorrow, going back 37 years, where the Wall Street Whiz Kid was born. I was a young kid in the business, less than 3 years. I was head of investment strategy for a New York Stock Exchange member firm. I said there was going to be a crash. The crash came. The day after the crash, I said we're going to go back to new highs within 2 years, and we did. And when I think of the problems we have now versus what we had at that point, it's not even remotely close. So I think the real concern is the complacency and the assumptions that people are making and are not prepared for anything on the negative side. And that's where I think, again, has aided gold, because the small group that recognizes that and realizes how critical that's going to become and how more useful it's going to be, they've been the buyers of it. And I believe the central banks should recognize that. Listen, this bull market didn't happen because me and you and others like you got people to buy gold. This happened because central banks have decided that there's going to be coming a major monetary change in the world, and gold is going to be as important, if not even more important, than bonds. And they've been repatriating wherever they had their gold and also buying it in huge quantities. And the price has not stopped them from doing that. We have not seen a fall off because of price. And now we see also that they're looking at silver, especially the key countries. So the gold and silver market, outside of corrections and consolidations, the least resistance is up, not down.
Let's dive deeper into the unique role silver is playing in today's industrial landscape. Unlike gold, silver has significant applications in technologies crucial to the green energy movement and modern industries. From solar panels to electric vehicles, silver is essential for its unmatched conductivity and durability. As companies race toward greener solutions, silver's demand as an industrial metal is skyrocketing, especially in solar energy, where higher silver content boosts efficiency. Industry reports show that global photovoltaic installations are projected to surge in 2024, with silver demand in this sector alone setting new records. And it doesn't stop at green tech. Silver's applications in military and aerospace technology are on the rise too. For instance, advanced military equipment and strategic technologies increasingly rely on silver's unique properties, making it a vital material with growing strategic importance. This dual nature of silver, as both a precious and an industrial metal, positions it uniquely in the commodities market, giving it strength in uncertain times while benefiting from technological advancements. So could silver's dual demand serve as the real catalyst for Grandich's predicted rally? With more sectors seeing silver as indispensable, the metal's value could be on the brink of a historic leap, and there's even more to consider on the global stage.
Up 2.3%, the number, we all know that. Anybody's got insurance. Look at our home insurance, our car insurance, everything that's going up. We now have the bottom half of people working in America, almost half of them now. It was just 25% a couple of years ago. Almost half of them now are using credit cards to pay for day-to-day needs. So this is no longer, it's way yonder. We don't have to worry about it. Most of the people listening to this, God willing, will be living when this crisis becomes acute. And that's why I think is also helping the metals, because people recognize that, and the detriment is going to be to paper currencies. Now, the Bitcoin people will tell you, somehow Bitcoin is a better thing. But if you think about it, when they started saying that as earnest 2-3 years ago, it's really gone nowhere as fast. It's only gone back to where it's been. And look what gold has done. And by the way, I don't see any central banks or any sovereign wealth funds announcing that they're buying huge quantities of Bitcoin, but they are buying gold. And that's where the 2,000 plus years, the credibility, the recognition, the understanding, and the people with the real power, that's what they're buying. And I still find most Americans have little or no ownership of gold to this day. We just had 3 or 4 families in the last week that came into our planning group, all with above average income, all loaded to the gills with stocks and bonds and not any exposure to metals. So anybody that thinks, oh, the metals have topped out, everybody's run into it, hasn't even started. In fact, today I was shocked. CNBC, Out TV, and one of the biggest talking heads on TV mentioned gold. They didn't go into a whole story like me and you were discussing now, but they mentioned it. By the time they're actually talking about it, it's going to be a lot higher. But gold and silver, other than correction phases, still have a long way to go. This bull market hasn't even become.
Silver's rise isn't happening in a vacuum. The current geopolitical landscape is providing strong support for its safe haven appeal. In times of global uncertainty, investors flock to assets that can help preserve wealth, and silver, alongside gold, is a classic choice. From tensions in the Middle East to shifts in international power dynamics, silver is becoming a favored asset amid rising risks. One of the most impactful trends supporting silver's surge is the growing movement away from the U.S. dollar. As countries explore alternatives, especially the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, many are choosing metals like silver and gold to back up their currencies, lessening reliance on traditional paper assets. According to Grandich, these changes are reshaping how we think about wealth storage on a global scale. Silver's rising relevance in this context could be a signal that a new financial order is emerging, one where silver plays a key role. This geopolitical backing amplifies silver's appeal to both institutional and retail investors. So, as nations increasingly look to metals to safeguard their economies, could silver's growing role as a currency of trust propel it toward those record-breaking highs? The answer might lie in the shifting tides of the global financial system.
Well, I don't think anyone knows for certain yet. They've put out stuff the last 72 hours that gives some inkling. The best educated guess is that their currencies will be used. There'll be some sort of rating system, how much one currency partakes in that basket versus others. But what you can never lose sight of is the dollar and the United States is outside looking in. And I always say to these younger financial advisors, and I say, okay, hold on a second. Maybe it's not as big as we say it is. It's only going to be half as big. But that half used to deal with the United States, was trading with the United States, was using the U.S. dollar, and now won't. Tell me how that benefits the United States. And they do the old Jackie Gleason honeymoon, because they can't answer it, because it is a very serious factor. Listen, Elijah, if we took a poll right now, if we went to any section of the United States, in any level of income, wherever they are, what they may do, and explain to people, we are going down, heading towards $36 trillion in debt, where Congressional Budget Office says we're going to get to $54 trillion in less than 8 years now. But let's just say we get to $50 trillion and put a 5% interest only on that. That's all the interest rates go to. You have to refinance it. That's $2.5 trillion in interest expense. We've only taken in $5 trillion in our best year. So even if that gets boosted up somehow in revenue, even though we got a president forgiving more student loans, which are the single biggest assets on the Americans' books. And I say to people, how do you expect the government to run when half the money is going to go to interest expenses? No way you can get the same services you are accustomed to. And by the way, and it was in a report I wrote, infrastructure is far worse. Natural disasters are far worse. Everything is costing more. It's not going.
Another factor fueling silver's bullish outlook is the technical patterns that indicate it's primed for a breakout. Historically, silver's price tends to move in sharp, explosive cycles, often following periods of consolidation. Recently, silver has been testing its key resistance levels, hovering just below the $35 mark, a level that's proven difficult to cross in the past. Technical analysts suggest that if silver can decisively break through this barrier, we could see an accelerated rally toward new highs. What's significant here is the convergence of both fundamental and technical factors. Strong demand, institutional support, and a favorable macroeconomic backdrop, all aligning with a bullish technical setup. Silver's price movements have shown resilience, and its recent attempts at higher highs could be paving the way for a powerful uptrend. Will silver's technicals align with these bullish fundamentals to fuel a massive breakout? If these conditions hold, Grandich's prediction may be closer than we think. The next step explores how investor psychology and market sentiment are poised to drive this momentum even further.
We're probably in a melt-up phase. I really think that with everything going and how it's going to go, and it may go through the election, but I think if you're investing past the next few weeks and if there's such a thing as a long-term investor that's thinking amount of years, I think you have to understand that one of the reasons gold has performed so well is certain people are recognizing something's not right. And if you are not positioned for what may not be right, it can come back to really bite you. And one of the things I've always said, and I'm singing to the choir, I know it's your business and all, but I always tell people, buy gold and hope it doesn't go up. And they always say the same thing. You've heard me say this before, and they go, why do you want me to buy something that's not going to go up? Because what you own here is likely to go down if gold goes up a lot. And so I think minimally, we have to recognize that gold has moved for something more than just guys like me that will look for capital appreciation. And we better start to understand what's happening around the world. And if we don't, we better make sure that our financial advisor does. And if he or she doesn't, you really need to find another one.
Silver's journey isn't just about fundamentals and technical patterns. It's also deeply tied to investor psychology and market sentiment, which play an enormous role in driving price action. Right now, sentiment around silver is steadily shifting as both retail and institutional investors are taking silver more seriously as a wealth-preserving asset. With recent volatility across equities and cryptocurrencies, there's a renewed appetite for safe haven assets, and silver's unique position as both an investment and industrial metal has heightened its appeal. What's more, as mainstream financial media begins to recognize silver's potential, a chain reaction among investors is likely to unfold. When big-name investors and analysts start talking about silver's breakout potential, it often leads to a rush of interest from the broader market. This snowball effect, where positive sentiment feeds into further price gains, could be what propels silver to new highs. So, could this growing momentum in market sentiment be the final push silver needs to hit Grandich's predicted all-time highs? With sentiment swinging in its favor, silver might just be on the cusp of something monumental. And finally, let's bring it all together with what this means for silver's future potential.
Any payments shrink, you'll go right to positive cash flow, and the car will get you from point A to B. And I expected the teenagers to say something, or the 18 or 19-year-old, but it was the mother that really got upset. I'm not giving up my Lexus to drive some. I said, listen, you should only be concerned about getting from point A to B because you're going to put your financial house in order. No, I'll have to do something. Maybe I'll get another job. So you're going to get another job just so you can drive that car. But unfortunately, Elijah, that's the mentality. People have got hooked on things. You know, George Carlin, who was not a Christian at all, actually disliked Christianity, but has a wonderful bit called Too Much Stuff. And I always send it out every so often because he's absolutely right about it. And that's been the problem. The poster child for what's wrong in America, and probably the world, but at least for America, through no fault of their own, is public storage facilities. Because your parents, and especially your grandparents, never used the public storage facility. They really didn't exist. Our grandparents lived in much smaller dwellings. They had far less stuff. And every medical study says we're more of a mess now than they were. So stuff doesn't work. But it's hard for people to hear that. Most people, even some people that'll watch this now agree, and then tomorrow they'll be out buying something they don't really need, but they like. So that's the challenge that we have, and that's the challenge that I have. And it was a challenge for myself. Please don't think that I've lived that way my entire life. I did. To me, money was equal to or surpassed God for maybe a third of my career. And it took making and losing and suffering stress and depression and all that to finally open my eyes to a much better way. And for me, and I'm not here to tell anybody else, but for me, my Catholic Christian faith really saved my life. I think I would have went off the deep end if I would have stayed the way I was. To me, at one time, the most important people were three people: me, myself, and I. And I've learned that God takes precedent over me, myself, and I.
With all these powerful forces at play, Peter Grandich's prediction of silver reaching new all-time highs no longer feels far-fetched. It feels like a very real possibility. Between the Federal Reserve's shift in interest rate policy, the surge in institutional demand, rising industrial uses, and the global move away from traditional currencies, silver is positioned like never before. Add in the bullish technical patterns and a wave of positive investor sentiment, and it becomes clear why Grandich believes silver is just getting started on an incredible rally. If these elements continue to align, silver could break through previous highs and enter uncharted territory. However, as with any investment, it's essential to stay informed and consider your risk tolerance carefully. While silver's future looks bright, remember this is not financial advice. Always conduct your own research and consult professionals before making investment decisions. And if you want to keep up with silver's exciting journey, don't forget to subscribe to our channel to stay updated on the latest trends and insights in precious metals.
Well, this position that I've taken decreases business potential, doesn't increase it. For every one person that may come to the door and go, wow, you really are a man of faith, yada, 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 3 or 4, I want no part of that, or it's not for me, or whatever the decision may be. I think what's important is I try to tell everybody that one book survived a couple thousand years, and you can argue whether it was the Word of God or a bunch of people thought they were inspired or they weren't even inspired. They got together and they wrote it. But what's interesting about it is it has more about matters of finance than it does about the topics you would think would be more discussed in it, heaven or hell. And what's interesting is there's one issue from a financial standpoint that has not one positive verse in the whole book, and that's debt. Any scholar will tell you that the only comments throughout Scripture in the Old Testament and the New Testament is to be concerned about, worried about, or be fearful of debt and what it can cause. And what have we done? We've gotten indebted like no other society has ever been indebted. And literally it is a way of life for people. And without it, they wouldn't know how to go about it. So one of my biggest challenges, Elijah, is whether you even have a chance to bring in my faith. When I start to talk about debt, and I'll give you an example if you don't mind. Just take a minute. I had this couple the other day, and they were about $2,500 a month over saving more than they spend. So in other words, they were spending about $2,500 more, and it couldn't continue. I said the only way it can continue is you either have to find higher income or decrease your spending. And I said, well, one of the ways is there's 4 years, there's 2 grown kids and 2 years, and there's about almost $6,800, I think we totaled up, of car loans sitting in the driveway. And I said, you could turn those cars in now, get 4 cars where you won't have